Good evening and welcome to the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Brodsky. Here. Rothman. DePlacido. Laney Martin. Here. Brown.
Here.
Weingrad.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
DePone.
Here.
Young Gertz. Here. Spiegelman.
Here.
Bowl.
Here.
Schreiber.
Here.
Bowman. Vice President Vahey.
Here.
President Hecker.
Here. Please note that...
This is Commissioner Rothman. I'm here, just so you know.
Oh, you are here. Okay, thank you, Drew. So,
Yep.
Thank you, Jimmy. Please note that Commissioner Bowman is excused this evening, and may we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I'll note that on this evening's agenda, under new business, the first item is a public hearing for the adoption of Ordinance 2216 relating to an amendment to our ordinance, our zoning code, as it relates to billboards. We will take public comment on that agenda item during the hearing itself. And so if you are here tonight to speak to the amendment to that section of the code, we'll take public comment on that during the public hearing. And with that, I will open it up for public comment on agenda items we are voting on this evening.
Could you move this? Oh, very good. Is that better? Yeah, hello. Adele Cubell, 1848 Ambler Road. This is 1583 Rothley. It's a slum property. All of you know that the general condition photo misrepresented the blighted slum property. Only a dysfunctional township would give special consideration to slum property owners. This property has a poor history and plans have a high potential of being unfit. Do not reward slum property owners with development opportunities. The minutes misrepresent facts and distribute inaccurate and fake information. This is done to hide the abusive behavior that administration and commissioners direct toward citizens. The failure to record information has allowed Mr. Hecker to increase his dictatorial actions and commands. The minutes secretary will not record anything that the leadership does not want to see written. The rejection of 2 petitions is identified as petitions were submitted. I presented 2 petitions in June. Both petitions were 100% refused by Rudolph Clark and Mr. Hecker. This can be watched in the June video. The first petition was a request for the years delayed and long promised Roslyn Library improvement to be built. 300 citizens signed this petition. The minutes call it a Roslyn Library petition. The second petition was a request to preserve the Lisson Marion property on Old York Road as green space. The minutes do not identify this petition. Perhaps the leadership is against purchasing green space. By accepting inaccurate and fake minutes, commissioners are being dishonest. In June, Ms. Gallagher lowered her microphone to tell me Abington will no longer accept citizen petitions. I asked the lieutenant on duty to take the petitions. After the leadership left for the night, I then asked the lieutenant to give the petitions to the police chief, Mr. Hecker, by stating that the township was in possession of the petitions. You misrepresented the truth. Mr. Hecker, you were dishonest. The police chief had to have contacted administration to ask how to move forward with rejected petitions. 11 questions were asked by citizens. Again, Mr. Hecker failed to answer questions. Citizen questions should be listed in the minutes. By listing questions and writing responses, there would be transparency. Mr. Hecker responded to a citizen's question by stating, I think we can find ways to answer whatever question you have. The question this citizen had been asked by others for 15 months. What happened to the comprehensive plan? Can you provide an update on the economic development of corporation? All this has been asked before. The hurdles that leadership has designed for citizens to jump for information are insurmountable. If citizens had not supported me, you would not have accepted the petitions. Commissioners have one priority, and that is assisting developers and now slum owners to build apartment complexes.
Okay, Ms. Kubel, your time has expired.
Alexis.
Please take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on matters that are on the agenda here this evening? And if not, we'll turn to Zoom.
Laura Lehman.
So, Commissioner Hecker, your Right to Know department had 3 weeks to get me the Right to Know documents from last time, since the last meeting. And they knew, and I noted it in my request, that it was needed for this meeting. For them not to deliver them in time is awful. But today, I began to go through the agenda document for Rothley, 1583 Rothley, which has been a mess from the beginning, and for 10 years has been a mess, with the township not doing anything that they were supposed to do, nothing. And it includes the process for this application, even to the extent that you are pushing final land development and land development together, or preliminary land development together, for no reason other than to take more time away from the residents to review things. What I saw tonight was that townhome had been added to the use matrix for R4. Are you on the computer, or are you listening to me, Mr. Hecker?
Could you please continue?
Oh, I'd be glad to. Please pay attention so that I can. Okay, so I am severely concerned about the fact that you cannot spot zone. You can't just allow one property to have townhomes. This was not explained to residents. They weren't given notices to come to the Planning Commission. It wasn't described to them that if this went into the use matrix, that every property would also be able to have a townhome built, every R4 that had the same conditions. And I don't know what conditions you put on. So I would like you to address whether this is the case. When I finish my comments, I'd like you to address whether this is the case. This would be a serious violation of the trust that you have, the people that are in R4 districts throughout this township that have no notice that townhomes now will be able to be built in the R4. So I want to understand if I don't have that right, and maybe you can tell me right now, yes or no, do I have that right?
Mr. Manfredi, Mr. Clark, could you answer that question?
Respectfully, I could if I understood it. I'm not sure what's being asked. Is it something about 1583 Rothley?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes, and she's claiming that townhome is now listed as an acceptable use in the R4 designation of the zoning district.
I don't believe that's the case.
Wouldn't we need a text amendment to get that done?
I think the text amendment had to do with the conditional use process and adding it by conditional use, or not by conditional use, excuse me. It doesn't add townhouses. No. It did not add townhouses to the proposed use. It just eliminated this type of use by conditional use.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
So
Mr. Hecker, Mr.
So
Mr. Hassan is here for when that item is on the
Okay,
agenda.
we'll speak to that when that item comes up.
Okay, so let me explain here
Well-
that if it was by conditional use before, and it is not, this property did not have to go through a conditional use hearing? Yes or no?
Which property are we talking about?
1583 roughly, the agenda, the one that's on the agenda.
We're talking about the change to the ordinance that we made a few months ago?
No, I believe the speaker is suggesting that by approving a land development application, we're somehow changing the text of our zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioner Vahey. No, that's not what we're doing at all. By approving this, it doesn't change the zoning for the entire district. We are approving this one land development application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark, and thank you for your comments, Ms. Lehman. Is there anyone else
So-
on Zoom? And with that, we will now turn to the consent agenda, and for that, I turn to Board Vice President Matt Vahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for passage of the consent agenda listed as items A through H. I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda carries. We have no unfinished business, and so we'll now go to new business, and I will once again turn to Board Vice President Matt Vahey. I think we have to make a motion to open the hearing.
Yeah, thanks. I need those prompts. First item of business is BOC 08080824. And I move to open the public hearing ordinance number 2216.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The public hearing is now open, and Mr. Clark, I turn this over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. This is a public hearing for the adoption of ordinance number 2216, amending the code of the Township of Abington at Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 162, Zoning, by amending and restating Article XX22 signs to regulate the size of billboards. All we are essentially doing here is that our billboard ordinance does not contain any size limitations for billboards. So what we're doing is we are putting a maximum square footage into the zoning ordinance, so it's clear what the maximum can be. And it is the same size as the maximum for multi-tenant sign areas in the district. So we're not increasing the size, we're not allowing for bigger billboards, we're not allowing for more billboards. We're just making sure that there is a general size limitation for billboards, so there's no ambiguity if somebody's trying to put up a billboard.
Understood. And if I could ask, how did we arrive at the dimensions that we decided to go with?
I believe it was the maximum that's allowed in, for multi-tenant signs in that area. We based it on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what's next?
Ask if there is any comment for the hearing.
Okay.
And then any questions from board members, and then we would be ready to take a vote.
Is there anyone here who wishes to comment on this change? Okay. Questions from members of the board?
Do we have a limit on the number of billboards, and if we don't, are we allowed to?
The ordinance does not contain a per se limitation on the number of billboards, but there are restrictions on where both billboards can be located in relation to the distance between another billboard. So we don't per se say you can only have 6 billboards in the entire township, but where they can go and the size, that's how they are regulated.
Okay.
Commissioner Hecker.
Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Weingrod.
Thank you. Are any billboards that are outside of the size limitation currently, are they grandfathered in? And then if they need maintenance or to be replaced, would they then be forced to fall under the new ordinance?
Any billboard that is currently larger than what you are approving this evening would be grandfathered in. Any replacement or repair that is identical or nearly identical to what is existing would be permitted to make that change. Anything, no one can, if you try to increase in size or if it is a wholesale swap out of the billboard, they would have to comply with the new regulations.
Commissioner Weingrad.
Thank you. As I understand the materials, the Montgomery County Planning Commission is recommending sort of a relationship between the speed limit and the size of the billboards. Are we putting that into this ordinance also, or is it just a maximum? I mean, I'd say it makes sense to me what Mr. Narkowicz with Montgomery County was saying, that, you know, I guess the slower the speed limit, the smaller the sign. And again, I think that's what, if I understand the materials, that's what he's recommending. So my question is that going to go in the ordinance as well?
Take it.
Go ahead, Mr. Manfredi.
It was recommended, but given the timing of passing this ordinance, in speaking with Mr. Narkowicz and the Planning Commission on our recent call, they understand that we want to move forward with this and not prolong it, and that we would take a look at those particular recommendations. You're correct. They recommended various sizes based on speed so that people aren't distracted by certain sizes or other types of things. So we had said that since we're working on our zoning regulations, that we would consider that later, and they were okay with that.
Okay.
Meaning in the next 3 to 6 months.
So there'll be a phase 2.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I also believe, along with what Mr. Manfredi is saying, we're looking at a lot of aspects of our zoning ordinance, especially as it relates to signs. And some of these best practices that are being recommended by the Planning Commission may be incorporated, but the desire to have this particular ordinance amended at this time, we didn't incorporate it just yet. We just wanted to get this through.
Yep, makes sense. Okay. Oh, all right. Commissioner Henry, then Commissioner Spiegelman.
So if that goes into effect, does the maximum stay the maximum, and then in lower speed limits, they're going to have smaller maximums for those folks, so that'll be adjusted for them?
If the ordinance gets passed in its present form, it would just be the maximums. Until the ordinance is amended in the future to speed limits, it wouldn't happen then until the ordinance is further amended. So that wouldn't be now.
And if anything happens in the meantime, then they would be grandfathered when the change happens. Is that correct?
The size, the maximum size they have now, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, President Hecker. This is just a brief question for Solicitor Clark. Solicitor Clark, could you just very briefly, for the benefit of folks watching and possibly to maybe preclude some folks' questions tonight, could you just remind everyone of why the township is unable to outright ban billboards categorically? I mean, we've talked about this in the past, but it might, just a very brief refresher might be good for some folks watching.
Because we will get sued and we will lose. That's the short answer. The more legal answer is that billboards are a permitted use, and anytime a municipality tries to ban outright a permitted use, and that ranges from billboards to cell towers to adult uses, anytime you try to ban anything outright that is a permitted legal use, you are facing a validity challenge, and you will lose. You are allowed to put certain restrictions. You are allowed to permit certain uses only in certain zoning districts, but an outright ban on a legal use is unconstitutional.
Perfect explanation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Solicitor Clark. Any further comments or questions from the board? I guess with that, we would make a motion to close the hearing.
I move to close the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The hearing is closed.
I now move for passage of ordinance number 2216, which amends the Code of Abington Township at Part 2, Chapter 162, by amending and restating Article 22 to regulate the size of billboards. And I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item of new business is BOC-09-080824, motion to approve the preliminary final major subdivision and land development for LD-23-03, which is 1583 Rothley Avenue, and I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there comments or questions from members of the board?
The applicant's attorney, Rob Lewis, is present this evening if anyone has any questions. We did have a full presentation by Mr. Lewis's partner at last month's meeting.
Yep, thank you. Commissioner Martin.
I had some calls from listeners, just a comment. I had went and knocked on some doors around the area of this development, and people are really glad to see that it's being developed, and that these they're being very neighborly, very easement to the neighbor next door, so they can drop, park their vehicle there. And I had a phone call just yesterday from a neighbor who was concerned about making sure that the building is complies with all the regulation and that it is built soundly. And I told her that yes, that if they want to comply with all the planning and all that's required, we're going to go for legal and great, and that they were happy. Oh, sorry. They were glad to hear that, and that they were glad that other neighbors had the opportunity to speak with me, and everyone was happy about it. So at the end of the conversation, she was happy also. So that's basically my comment. That it seems like the community, of the few people I spoke to who are directly adjacent or across the way from this property, they seem to be okay with the development.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
Next item of new business is BOC-10-080824, motion to consider a resolution approving intergovernmental agreement between Atkinson Township and Atkinson School District regarding Bus Patrol America LLC, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Since this is written as a motion to consider, Mr. Manfredi, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, President Hecker, I would suggest on this item and on the next item, Deputy Chief Porter, who is online, just to give a very brief overview of each of these things for your consideration, since this is something new that the school district has requested, and would be very brief.
Okay. Welcome, Deputy Chief.
Good evening, President Hecker and board members. Just briefly, this is the automated enforcement program that some of the municipalities around us have been participating in for a few years now. This is where a camera is mounted on the side of the school bus, and it captures violators passing school buses that have their red lights activated and the arms out. It's taken some time, but working with the solicitor's office, the legislators have passed the law and got it to the point to where we feel that it's reasonable and that it's something that we can work with, that we can assist in this program, working with the school district to help enforce this.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Vice President Vehy.
Yeah, maybe for the solicitor, why do we have an intergovernmental agreement as well as a memorandum of understanding?
The intergovernmental agreement is meant to ratify how we'll be handling this with the school district, and the memorandum of understanding is also between Bus Patrol and the township.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Two separate actions. Okay.
Got it.
Commissioner Schreiber.
I'm wondering if and maybe it's not through us, maybe it's through the school district, if there's going to be some kind of campaign to educate people around this. You're already nodding your head. I recently, well, I guess it was when school was in, so it must have been last spring, but it seems recent. I was watching a bus pulled over, and people were turning. They couldn't figure out if they were allowed to do that. Like, I could see them, like, kind of turning and stopping because they weren't on the same street as the bus. They were on a cross street. And so I think people don't really necessarily know what the rules are around buses. So maybe an education program around, once we do this, would be good.
Thank you. Commissioner Weingart, did you have a comment, or were you just pointing out that the person to my left wanted to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, Deputy Chief, how this works. That, is it like a red light camera that if somebody blows a stop sign on a school bus, that automatically a photo is taken and then the process will start from there? Or is it like a button that the bus driver hits and says, okay, we're gonna take a photo here for that vehicle that just passed? Do you know how it's supposed to work?
Yes, sir. The technology, not completely, but the process I do understand. And the process is the camera will capture the violation. It'll go to bus patrol. They will vet the violation first, much like our red light camera program. It gets vetted by the company first. Then they send it it'll be sent to our traffic safety unit. And our traffic safety officers will then look at each violation and determine whether or not to proceed and issue a citation. And as with the other automated enforcement systems throughout the Commonwealth, there's no points assigned to this violation, and it's technically a civil penalty for the driver.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Solicitor Clark, the motion was written as a motion to consider. Do we need to amend that to say that?
I think you should.
Okay.
Because if you're going to want to approve it, the motion should be to approve the resolution and approve the memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
And you can take these both together.
Okay, can I make the motion to amend? Okay. So I move to amend my prior motion to be a motion to adopt the resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement between Abington Township and Abington School District regarding Bus Patrol America, LLC.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. You want to make the motion for this one as well?
Yeah, and I
Again.
also move for adoption of the memorandum of understanding between Bus Patrol America, LLC and Abington Township Police Department in support of school bus stop arm enforcement program. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, so both have been moved and seconded, so we will be voting to approve both of these. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both motions carry.
And last item of new business is BOC-12-080824, motion to adopt Resolution 24-031 for the execution of a cable franchise agreement between the Township and Comcast Cable Communications Management, LLC. And I so move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments or questions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
And that concludes the new business, Mr. President.
Thank you, Vice President Vehy. We'll now turn to the Finance Committee and Finance Committee Chair, Commissioner Stuart Weingrad.
Thank you, President Hecker. The only item we have for this evening is FC 01080824, motion to approve the June 2024 expenditures in the amount of $3,699,845.78 and salaries and wages in the amount of $2,378,065.70, and authorizing the proper officials to sign and approve invoices and supporting documentation and payment of bills and contracts as they mature through the month of September 2024, and I so move.
Second. It has been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Brodsky?
Yes.
Rothman?
Yes.
DePlacido?
Yes.
Laney Martin?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Weingrad?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Sapone? Yes. Youngart?
Yes.
Spiegelman?
Yes.
Ball?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Bowman? Vice President Vehy?
Yes.
President Hecker?
Yes.
Motion passed.
And that would conclude the items for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weingrad. We will now open it up for public comment on general matters of township business. Please come forward.
A slum property owner forward. This LLP, or whatever the corporation's called, should have paid multiple fines over many years. Now they're going to get all the breaks to build horrendous apartments. I have numerous bullet points. Rudolph and Clark has not stepped up to hold commercial businesses and apartment owners accountable for blight and unsafe conditions. On Old York, the Smile Center, Car Wash, and Luke Oil next to Moreland have continuously left their dumpsters open for years. The dumpsters are continuously opening. The 1500 block of Old York has apartment trash cans that regularly are turned over and spreading trash. If the owners of the apartments cut his lawn, the small area of grass there, the trash cans would stand up properly. How many years does it take to get trash dumpsters shut and trash cans standing up properly? This has been reported for 3.5 years. Lee's Hoagies and Listen Marion have needed new streetlights for close to 2 years. The area is pitch black at night and very dangerous. Were lights ever ordered? It's almost 2 years. I don't believe they were ever ordered. It is very important, and it should be of primary importance, to provide a safe environment. Mr. Manfredi is never held accountable for his poor decisions that have left Abington depleted and unsafe. $34,000 was lost to unnecessary fines. Every buck stops with Mr. Manfredi. $34,000 could have bought new street benches, street island repair, a few street lights, and even some repaving. Apartments. Ms. Henry told me over a year ago that sidewalks were being installed at the expense of taxpayers to assist in the development of apartment buildings. Taxpayers-funded sidewalks indicate where apartments are going. These sidewalks are a game changer for the Goldmans and other developers. Drew Rothman and other commissioners agreed that the flats brought trash and more dangerous congestion to Jenkintown. The apartment area now looks like an industrial complex. Yet, Mr. Rothman and others voted the Goldman plan on Lenox forward. The area can't afford more apartments. Areas that are too dangerous for walking or biking are being created. The toll complex means a lower standard of living. The property should have been utilized as a school, as Mr. Rooney suggested. Instead, commissioners welcomed the tolls. Commissioners incrementally moved the toll plan forward. Developers are highly supported by this administration. Mr. Rothman is simply overlooking the truth by claiming the township was not included in the toll plans.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Cabell. Your time has expired. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak? And if not, we will turn to Zoom.
Laura Lehman.
So my time was taken again. I didn't get the rest of my answers while Mr. Clark was pretending not to answer and understand my question. It's really important for residents to be able to ask questions and get answers. And this is, I mean, for one thing, we're allowed to get documents and we can't even get them. Mr. Clark's had 3 weeks and could not deliver the documents in time for the meeting. Outrageous. And he just said something about townhomes were allowed under conditional use or something else. I didn't understand it at all. There was no opportunity to clarify. There's no interest that you have, Commissioner Hecker, in actually having understanding occur for the residents who pay the phenomenal salaries of the 275 people who serve you to answer our questions and meet our needs. And we are treated like last-class citizens. That has to stop. I looked up the matrix, and townhomes are not in the matrix anywhere that I see. And that is outrageous. You are not allowed to sponsor. So I'd like to understand that fully, how you did this, and why it is not going to affect other people if you added it to the use matrix.
Commissioner Hecker, just so we can clear this up again.
All right, stop the clock, please.
As I indicated, I didn't completely understand the speaker's question. Luckily, Mr. Manfredi did, and he texted me. The townhomes were allowed by a variance that was granted by the zoning hearing board. That variance would only apply to that one property. It would not mean that everyone else in the district would be entitled to a variance to get townhomes.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. So now, and that is the answer I was looking for. So now I'd like to understand how that is not spot zoning. The carriage houses in Ward 3 by the Toll Brothers are also the same situation, where you gave them a special zoning designation only for that property, and now you're giving this zoning designation.
No, we aren't, Ms. Lehman. That's the key. The zoning hearing board granted the variance, not the Board of Commissioners.
They're not allowed to do that. Spot zoning is illegal in Pennsylvania, and while there are some areas where it can be legal, one of the things that you did is the Montgomery County Planning Commission wrote a letter saying that it complied with the vision of future land zoning that they planned, suburban residential zoning, which allows for multiple kinds of land zone. That zoning doesn't exist now. And so it should not have been something that was allowed in this case. In the future, when that's passed, well, that would be a valid argument. But it's not a valid argument at the moment.
You're taking issue with the Board of Commissioners that had no say in that variance. And so maybe you should go to the zoning hearing board meeting and express your concern.
You're all responsible for understanding if spot zoning is taking, you have a lawyer sitting right there, Mr. Clark, who should be looking out for the fact if things were not done right in the zoning hearing board.
Okay, Ms. Lehman, I'm going to ask you to conclude your comments. You're over time.
All right, I will conclude them. They are not done right all the time. The Montgomery County Planning Commission, the municipalities planning code has very specific and limited restrictions on how you pass a variance, and they are ignored all the time. Mr. Vey, sitting right next to you,
Okay,
came one
thank you for your
time.
comments, Ms. Lehman.
Mike Tobin?
Mr. Tobin? Mr. Tobin, can you hear us? We can't hear you. His hand went down. Try again, just one more time. All right, there we go.
Mike Tobin? You're unmuted.
Mr. Tobin, we can't hear you. Give it one last, and then we'll bring it to a conclusion.
Mr. Tobin?
Mr. Tobin, can you hear us?
Hey, this is Drew Rothman. I just sent Mr. Tobin a text. So if we could just give him, like, I don't know, 15 more seconds than we normally would or something like that. Let's see if it works.
Okay.
And the reason I suggest only 15 seconds is because if it's a tech issue, then it's probably not getting resolved this minute anyway. So I just wanted to see if we could figure it out for him. Thank you.
Yep, sure thing. Is he there or no?
Not Sam.
Okay.
No response to my text yet either.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I think we will conclude public comment, and we are adjourned, and we will move on to the working session.